I discovered 3 terrifying stalker horror stories that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, I felt a chill grip my heart. The air turned cold, almost electric. My routine, my normal life, shattered in an instant. I was just sitting at my desk, the soft hum of my computer the only sound in the quiet room. Then, a noise, the creak of a floorboard. I froze, eyes wide, breath caught in my throat. The room was dim, shadows lurking in every corner. I could smell the musty scent of old wood and something more sinister, like rotting leaves. My mind raced. Had someone broken in? But the whispers around me were just in my head, right? Still, I felt my skin crawl, goosebumps rippling down my arms. I shook off the feeling, it was just the wind until it wasn't. There it was, again, a low scratching sound, as if something, or someone, was trying to get in. I glanced at my door, my heart pounding. The shadows grew longer, darker, twisting unnaturally. What was out there? Then, a soft thud. I turned my head sharply, but nothing moved. Just silence, heavy and suffocating. I swallowed hard, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I leaned forward, trying to listen. More sounds, faint but undeniably, a shuffling, breathing, like something was lurking just beyond the threshold. Fear tightened around me like a vice. What if no, it couldn't be? But deep down, the creeping dread told me otherwise. I should have listened. I should have locked that door. My fingers trembled as I reached for the knob, but just as I was about to turn it, a loud bang thundered from the other side. I stumbled back, terror twisting my insides. My breath quickened, and my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, to run, but my feet were glued to the floor. The door rattled violently, as if something was trying to break in. I saw a shadow shift, a dark silhouette standing just behind the wood. My heart dropped. In a moment of sheer instinct, I turned to flee, but another sound, heavy, deliberate footsteps, made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was real, and it was coming for me. I took a step back. What was happening? The reality pressed down on me, suffocating. How had it come to this? My world spun, and just as I was about to scream, the door slammed open, darkness spilling into the room. I was trapped. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness poured into the room like a tide, swallowing the feeble light and consuming all hope. I stood frozen, my mind racing with what could burst forth from the black void beyond the threshold. A silence descended, thick and oppressive, waiting as the darkness itself seemed to breathe. Then, out of the depths of shadow, it emerged, a figure, indistinct and amorphous, like a mass of shifting smoke. My heart screamed, tearing through the silence as the air thickened, suffocating in its malevolence. It loomed taller than I had imagined, shifting in and out of focus. My instincts screamed at me to run, yet my limbs were paralyzed, riveted by primal terror. Help me, a voice called softly, a whisper drifting through the air like cold mist. It sounded like my own voice, a desperate echo reverberating from the recesses of my Minda memory long buried. The voice, however, was thick with fear and confusion, a stark reminder of the shadows I had tried to forget. What are you? I stuttered, my voice barely rising above a whisper. The figure drew closer, shapes emerging within its darkness, faces twisted in anguish and despair, their expressions contorted in eternal torment, all familiar yet grotesquely distorted. I felt bile rise in my throat, and the memories flooded back, unbidden. Each anguished face belonged to a lost part of my past, echoes of lives I had wronged, link severed by time and betrayal. As the image solidified, the faces whispered in unison, their voices a cacophony of pain, "You are not alone. You cannot escape." A chill skittered down my spine, for the power of their collective will pressed in toward me, unraveling the very threads of my sanity. They reached out with ghostly hands, fingertips brushing against my skin like icy tendrils, suffocating my breath. That I stumbled backward, collapsing against my desk, knocking over a lamp that shattered, sending shards of glass raining around me like 1,000 tiny daggers. It was then that I caught a glimpse of something else, a flicker of movement at the corner of my disarrayed vision. Another figure, more solid than the dark entity, slithered into the room with an unsettling ease, a ghoulish grin splitting its featureless face. "Inviting new friends, I see," it crooned, its voice dripping with malice. I recognized that tone. It was the voice of my tormentor, the one who had stalked me from the safety of my nightmares into this waking horror. I shook my head, trying to convince myself this was nothing but a grotesque manifestation of my mind's cruelty. But with every passing second, the boundary of reality began to fray, the air was thick with tension, an unseen force pressing in on me. The shadows danced, playing tricks on my rapidly deteriorating perception. I could hear them now, the soft padding of feet, the rustle of fabric brushing against skin, and then a sound that froze the blood in my veins, laughter. It was high-pitched and twisted, a shrill, mocking chorus emanating from the room's corners, wrapping around me like chains. Suddenly, a piercing wail erupted from the throats of the shadowy figures, resonating deep within my chest. They surged forward, their amorphous hands reaching for me, and a darkness heavier than anything I had ever known enveloped me. I struggled to break free, but the weight of their anger was suffocating. I could feel my consciousness beginning to slip away. In a final, desperate act of resistance, I screamed and lunged toward the fractured doorframe, but it was too late. The facade of reality shattered, and I fell into an abyss of sound and fury. For an instant, everything stopped. A heartbeat of silence before the unyielding darkness whispered back to life, more insidious than before. As I grasped for the remnants of my sanity, a thought ignited within the shadows: perhaps the figures weren't merely haunting me. Perhaps they were here for a far more sinister purpose. "What do you want from me?" I cried into the void, but before an answer could take shape, a cold laughter wrapped around me, and I was pulled into the dark tide. The world spun, and just as my vision began to fade, I saw another shadow emerging, bigger and more terrifying. It was coming for me, hungry, ready to feast on my soul, and in that moment of sheer horror, I realized, it was already too late. The oppressive darkness clung to me, a living shroud that dragged me deeper into its cold embrace. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, 1,000 pinpricks of malevolent intent boring into my skin. Time lost its meaning within this inky void, seconds stretched into hours, days, perhaps even an eternity. The laughter persisted, echoing off phantom walls, mocking me with every heartbeat. As I was pulled into the suffocating depths, flashes of my life flickered before me, each moment a bright star snuffed out by the encroaching shadow. Faces of friends, family, loved ones, their smiles twisted into looks of horror, as if they too could sense the creeping dread that had taken me hostage. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate for the nightmarish visions to cease, but the darkness had other plans. Help, a voice, barely a whisper yet insistent, wormed its way into my thoughts. Help us. The plea was a cacophony of cries, each layer more desperate than the last, reverberating within me, clawing at my very essence. You can set us free. My heart hammered in my chest, a frantic counterpoint to the abyss's relentless pull. How? I gasped, my throat raw as I fought against the impending doom. The moment I uttered the question, lightning erupted through the dark, illuminating a grotesque vis-a-vis mouth, wide and gaping, painted with remnants of past victims, their eyes gleaming with unfulfilled anguish. Each face was a phantom of anguish, slipping in and out of view, echoing their silent screams in my mind. Awaken. The entity roared, a tempest of voices merging into one. You are the key. The word resonated, vibrating through the air, and I felt a sudden jolt of memory flood my mind, images from the past coursing back like a rapid tide. Small, faded snapshots of betrayal, guilt, and buried regrets, images of people whose relationships I had wrecked, a series of misfortunes that started the chain of events leading me here. Sickened by my own role in this tragic tableau, I cried out, "I can't." But my denial only intensified their cries. "You have to face them. Only then will they find peace." Their insistence clawed at my sanity, as their fingers brushed against me, icy and desperate. The darkness breathed around me, thickening with an electric tension I could almost taste that I in my mind's eye. The whispers morphed into something more tangible, shapes flickering through the gloom, silhouettes of those I had wronged. I recognized each one, their once kind faces twisted by betrayal and regret. They moved closer, their outlines sharpened by the intensity of their emotion, swirling around me in a vortex of anguish. I could almost feel the warmth of their touches, now replaced with a biting coldness that settled like frost on my skin. "Forgive us," they wept, their unified sorrow reverberating within me, a clash of turmoil and despair. "Help us remember," as their network of fractured souls enveloped me, their longing seeped into my bones, mingling with my own dismay. The shadows around me stretched, morphing into a distorted landscape of memories, a derelict playground where laughter once danced freely, now reduced to echoes of despair. That I stumbled through the vistas of my past, the laughter of innocent children intermingled with hushed cries, as the scene shifted to a dark pathway where I felt the oppressive weight of grief firmly rooted in my chest. Suddenly, I found myself standing before a warped mirror. The reflection looked back, and I gasped in horror. It wasn't just me, but all of them. Their faces poured into mine, shame and regret melting together in a grotesque reformation of my being. "Confronted." They shrieked, their voices a symphony of anguish, curdled by the specters that loomed in the corners, shadows waiting patiently for my reckoning. "Face what you've buried. Break the chain." But in that harrowing moment, I saw the other figure emerge, a silhouette poised in the background, watching silently. Its expression was inscrutable as it glided forward, an unnatural elegance anchoring the ever-deepening dread within me. This apparition felt different. Distinct from the cacophony of souls trapped in anguish. It bore a familiar presence, a chilling reminder of the origin of my darkest experiences. "What do you want?" I shrieked in desperation, trying to ward off the encroaching shadows drawing dangerously close. "What do you want from my past?" Just as the figure began to materialize, a deafening scream echoed behind me, a sound layered with rage and sorrow that sent ripples of fear through my soul. Without thought, I turned, facing the brunt of the unseen dread, even as the laughter surged, merging with the primal cries. In that split second of realization, I felt something shift. The shadows pulsed like a heartbeat, a malignant force hungry for resolution. What lay in wait was unfathomable, a domain where memories and malice intertwined into a web of despair, and my destiny was no longer mine alone to carve. The darkness, now alive with its own sentience, beckoned me nearer, drowning the last vestiges of hope. With a final thought crystallizing in panic, I had unleashed what had languished too long in the depths, and in that moment of clarity, I understood one horrifying truth: I was not its captive after all. I was its vessel, and it intended to use me to enact a revenge that had brewed long before my time. And just like that, I was gripped by an icy hand, pulling me deeper into the unforgiving maelstrom, the darkness whispering one final truth into my ear: "It's time to remember or perish." The grip of the icy hand tightened, its skeletal fingers digging into my flesh, a searing cold that coiled around my heart and sent shockwaves of terror racing through my veins. Around me, the shadows pulsed with malignant glee, swelling like hungry tides, eager to swallow me whole. The spectral figures of the people I had wronged loomed close, their faces stricken with both fury and sorrow. "You cannot run from this," they hissed, as if we were all tethered to a shared fate. With every heartbeat, visions erupted within my mind, a barrage of memories long buried. I stood in the corner of a room as the whispers of a family dinner faded into shouts and accusations. I was the one who had escalated the debate, who had dismantled hope with a careless word. The flashes came quicker, the devastated faces of friends I had betrayed with glances meant for others, the lonely eyes of a lover I had scorned. My past was a labyrinth of shattered trust, and these were the souls trapped in its twisted passages. "Remember us." They wailed, their voices a relentless storm that pounded against the walls of my sanity. I could feel their anguish wrapping around me like chains, a grim reminder of the nightmares I had created. Suddenly, the shadows drew back, welcoming the figure that had lingered, watching from the depths. The moment it stepped into the fragile light, it revealed itself an unnerving echo of my own self, breathtakingly familiar yet warped, as if crafted from the ashes of my regrets. This doppelganger wore a smile that sent a chill racing up my spine, a sinister mixture of allure and dread. Are you ready to witness the truth? It purred, its voice smooth as silk but laced with a darkness that turned my insides to ice. We've waited patiently for you to unveil what you so desperately want to hide. You think you're the hero of your story, but you're just another character rehearsing for a tragedy. With the incarnation of my conscience before me, the suffocating shadows warped into a theater of despair, the air pregnant with memories enacted like plays on an eerie stage. My doppelganger gestured widely, drawing the curtains of my past, revealing scenes I had wanted to forget, a desperate child crying out in the rain, their pleas drowned by the weight of my indifference. Each replay ignited the sting of guilt anew, amplifying the dissonance echoing in my soul. No. This is not me. I cried, but my voice faltered in weakness, swallowed by the taunting laughter that sliced through the air. My accuser stood ever closer, an extension of my torment, injecting venom into every hopeful thought I struggled to maintain. But it replied, twisting my own rhetoric into a blade meant to cut deeply. This is the real you, and you've done nothing to absolve yourself. Every ounce of pain you've caused is a chain binding you to this moment. You cannot escape it, nor can you escape me. Embrace what you are, or be consumed. With those final words, the shadows erupted around me like fireworks of dread, swirling into a whirlwind that pulled at my very core. I felt a dark laughter rising from within, a cackle that blended with my own internal screams. No! I shouted against the cacophony as the darkness thickened, tightening its noose around my throat, choking off any shred of defiance I still held onto. In a moment of desperation, I reached out, my hands grasping at the ephemeral forms of those I had wronged. I'm sorry. I implored, tears streaking down my face, an ocean of remorse florid in the dim glow of my own fears. Please forgive me. As the shadows danced, shifting into the shapes of those I revered and betrayed, their eyes glimmered with an unsettling mixture of hope and horror, urging me to confront the truth. Do not seek our forgiveness, they whispered as the fabric of reality around us quaked. Find your own. Suddenly, I was yanked backward, yanked away from the sinuous nightmare. The ground beneath me surged, and I plunged into a pit of darkness, deeper than any abyss I had ever known. It felt endless, as all specters roared their final requiem in grotesque harmony, the cacophony blending with my ragged sketches of fear. The last thing I clutched to my mind was the sickening feeling of being watched. Glaring eyes peered from the cracks of the void, waiting in patience, hungering for when I would break. Just as the gusts of despair threatened to swallow me whole, an explosive flash of light pierced through the gloom, illuminating what lay before me. It wasn't an entrance. I was ensnared in a fractured mirage of my life, with people I had scarred reaching out. But now, the figures took on an unmistakable form. Each one was a reflection of my own fractured self, some pristine, some grotesque. And then, from behind the throng of faces, my doppelganger stepped forward, eyes glinting with a savage satisfaction, revealing a blade dripping with shadows, whispering the final revelation in a cold breath: choose one to become forever. Choose one to consolidate your soul's darkness. Before I could fathom the horror I faced, the uncurling shadows tightened their grip, pulling me toward my own reflection as whispers echoed, the final act begins, choose wisely. And as I tumbled deeper into this fathomless nightmare, I felt the weight of souls watching as the ground beneath me cracked open, revealing hell itself, waiting for my decision. The maelstrom of reflection spun faster, blurring the boundaries of self and shadow until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Faces surged and shifted, morphing into grotesque parodies of the people I had once known. The air was thick, choked with an unnameable dread, oozing from the cracks like a malevolent mist. Each heartbeat reverberated against the shifting canvas of horrors, echoing the fateful choice looming before me. Choose, my doppelganger intoned, its voice like gravel scraping against bone. The blade it wielded glimmered darkly beneath the fractured light, a hypnotic lure all its own. I felt the collective stare of countless eyes upon me, each imbued with histories of anguish, scorn, and hopeless longing. It was as if they hungered for my decision, their gazes weighty enough to drown me in shame. the reflection started to form clearer shapes around me, 3 distinct souls coalescing into figures that drew near, each representing a part of my past I had wished to forget. They were stunning and horrifying in equal measure. The first was a woman with golden hair that spilled like sunshine against her pale skin, eyes alight with a warmth I had betrayed. Sarah. In her days of light, she had trusted me without reservation, had laughed, cried, and dreamt with me. But I had severed her faith with my treachery, choosing to cast her aside for a moment's thrill. The void where her light had been left behind tugged at my heart. "You can do better," she whispered, her voice tinged with a haunting echo of hope, beckoning me closer with an outstretched hand stained with shadows. Next to her was a darkened figure, its form shifting like smoke, the spirit of a friend lost in the depths of envy. I barely recognized David, his once vibrant presence leached of color, his eyes pools of sadness reflecting my darkest choices. "You think you can erase your past?" he hissed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "There's no redemption for you, only a descent into madness." His hand was extended, but it felt more like an accusation than a refuge, and then, cradled by the chaos, stood the third figure, a child, barely more than a frail wisp, with eyes like wells of despair. Little Lily, my young neighbor whose laughter was silenced by my indifference, forever longing for a friend who had fled. Kneeling before me, she clutched a ragged teddy bear, her small hands trembling. "Please don't forget me," she pleaded, her voice laced with a crystalline innocence that broke my heart anew. As the 3 symbols of my past stood before me, shadows thrumming with anticipation, the weight of my decision crashed over me like the tide. Each figure reflected a part of me, a piece of my soul that had splintered and fractured into eternity. Would I choose to embody trust, deceit, or the innocent burden of neglected guilt? But just as my resolve began to flicker, that damnable blade in my doppelganger's hand began to glow ominously. "Choose, or choose not," it murmured, circling me like a predator sizing up its prey. "Either way, chaos will reign. You alone can decide which part of yourself to become." Each path leads deeper into darkness, pulsing visions danced around the edges of my mind, each scenario splitting my thoughts on the worst choices I could make, the perpetual cycle of horror surging with every heartbeat in time with my frantic thoughts. I felt myself drawn to them, my hands trembling. Each painful embrace threatened to pull me into a chasm of infinite despair. "Choose." The spectral voice thundered, drowning out the echoes of my past, slamming against the fragile walls of my resolve. The weight of decision pressed against my chest until my breath quickened, everything around me teetering on the brink of madness, and then, the ground beneath me roared, fissures erupting as ghostly hands broke through, desperate and clawing, ready to haul me down into their eternal grasp. I could feel the nightmarish pull of their terrible yearning, the dark fate awaiting me if I failed to decide. Just as I was about to extend my hand toward underneath, ground shattered beneath my feet, and a thunderous roar erupted around me. From the encroaching darkness, a cacophony of anguished cries surged forth, and as I struggled to breathe, a voice brewed from the depths, a siren song that cut through all the pain, whispering, "Are you sure you want to belong to one of these shadows forever? What if there's something worse?" The shadows recoiled, revealing what lay beneath their true forms. My heart skipped as horror clawed its way into my throat. That a roiling mass of darkness rose from the chasm that had opened, an undulating flood of shadows writhed and twisted, revealing hundreds of faces, each more grotesque than the last, drawn from the depths of my own guilt and regret. They leaned towards me, ready to sweep me away, and just before I slipped into their grasp, I caught sight of something still deeper, lurking in the abyss, a hidden truth that threatened to swallow me whole, and in that moment of impending doom, I understood with sickening clarity that the real choice was not about saving one of them. The doppelganger's grin widened as it brandished the blade anew, ready to strike down my last shred of defiance. "You have merely delayed the inevitable. What if it's not about choosing? What if the darkness has already made the choice for you?" As the darkness surged forward, the malicious whispers echoed in my ears, taunting me with the weight of the fate yet to unfold. I was already slipping, grasping for something, anything that could ground me in this tumultuous descent into oblivion, and as the shadows closed in for the final embrace, a scream ripped through me, both hopeful and haunting. "No!" But before I could finish, the legends of my soul began to unravel, spiraling into the yawning chasm before me. In that moment, I realized it was too late for choices. I was already bound to the darkness, to whatever horror it had in store for me. The world around me faded to ink, a senseless void blanketing my awareness before erupting into deep, luxuriant shadows that stretched infinitely in all directions. The faces I had seen just moments before, twisted and contorted in agonizing anguish, swirled around me, devouring any thought of sanctuary or escape. The ground beneath still trembled, its pulse synchronizing with the relentless thrum of my chaos-ridden heart, drumming a discordant symphony of despair that I and the cacophony of terror. Something shifted. A fleeting silhouette darted at the fringes of my vision, a primitive instinct sparked to life within me. I turned to chase it but was met only with the yawning maw of despair. The shadows seemed to howl and laugh terror dark, victorious sound that reverberated within the abyss. Fool, the doppelganger jeered, its image blurring as if it were being swallowed by the very darkness it commanded. You thought you could escape by merely delaying your decision. The darkness itself will claim you. It doesn't wait for choices. That I felt myself cry out, the words mingling with terror. Let me go. I refuse this. But my voice was but a fragile whisper in this monstrous realm, and it felt as though my very resolve was being consumed by the madness that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Suddenly, the void responded. A thin crack appeared in the air, wisps of metallic stench encroaching upon me, a puff of steam that shimmered and warped my perception. I glanced toward it, fueled by an impulse too primal to resist. From this rift emanated a beacon of vivid colors, a stark contrast to the monochromatic horror enveloping me. It felt like an anomaly, a shard of hope, yet it pulled me as irresistibly as gravity itself. That I lurched towards it, nearly losing my footing on the shifting ground, and as I drew closer, whispers cascaded through the air, snippets of fragmented conversations that swirled around like the blades of a storm. I caught phrases join us and never find peace, each laden with an unsettling familiarity. The voices melded with memories, echoes of my own laughter cut short, memories I had buried beneath the weight of oblivion. Then, surfacing through the chaos, I glimpsed a memory that I thought abandoned. A darkened alleyway, the suffocating silence before a storm, laughter mingling with dread. David? Sarah? Or was it the innocent curiosity of Lily? The flickering images were intoxicating, casting shadows that sulked just beyond my comprehension. I was drawn to their significance, but they faded just as abruptly. The grasp of forgotten moments roiling within the rift felt like a glimpse into an abyss of my failures. As I inched towards it, the ground shifted beneath me, retreating as the shadows gathered, pulling away in trepidation. Don't approach that. The doppelganger screeched, its voice sharp and seething with rage, betraying a fear I had not anticipated. You belong to the darkness. Something within me stirred, a defiance that glimmered for the briefest of moments like a star extinguished in the vastness of the cosmos. The shadows pressed in around me, and in their encroaching forms, I saw vibrant colors being siphoned from my memories, reduced to monochrome horror. The faces I had once cherished twisted into specters of my misdeeds. Don't do it. The voices clamored, as if sensing my desperation. You'll regret walking into the light. But the light called to men it as a promise of salvation, but as a siren song of redemption. I was determined. My hand reached out toward the crack, palm tingling as I felt a pull dragging me through the potential forlorn future. I was teetering on the edge when the ground rolled violently, jerking me back into the realm of shadows. I flailed, trying to maintain balance. No. My voice rang across the dark expanse, the atmosphere thickening around me, fueled by my lacerated hope. Just then, the shadows erupted, unleashing a monstrous roar that could only be likened to the wailing chorus of lost lives. They billowed toward me, blurring my senses as they erupted into a storm of faces, each filled with longing, each a distorted reflection of my current self. The form of the doppelganger contorted, becoming myriad versions of my own visage, twisted with fear and regret. Your time is almost up. It thundered, melding into the tide of shadows, its numerous distorted mouths chanting my name. They surged, monstrous hands reaching hungrily. I felt their cold grip grazing my ankles, drawn to the warmth of my living essence. I had but moments to escape their grasp. In that precise moment, with my heart racing, I lunged for the crack of light. With an explosion of sensation, the darkness recoiled, each shadow halting abruptly as though tethered to an unseen force. Then, clearer than ever, I heard whispers driving me back from the brink. Will you finally choose? And just on the cusp of plunging into the truth waiting beyond the light, reality twisted again. A shadow erupted from the depths, larger, more malevolent and explosive than before, a nightmarish beast peeling away the thin sheets of hope that enveloped me. As I first cast a frantic glance back, the ground trembled violently, and then, with a titanic roar, the shadow stepped into view, a figure vast and engulfing, its visage a grotesque parody of myself. The face twisted into an unsettling grin, a mirror reflecting my worst fear. Do you hear it? It whispered, the sound an echo of my own voice, laced with madness. You can't escape because you have nowhere to go. And as the swirling darkness closed in for the final act, the terrifying realization crashed over me. The real horror awaited just beyond the threshold of the crack. The light I had so desperately sought was but another veil, a nightmare yet unseen. With trembling hands and a heart too heavy to bear, I edged closer to the inevitable collision of light and shadow, uncertainty enveloping me like a shroud. In that chilling moment, I felt the ground beneath tremble anew, alive with a menacing hunger that promised to consume everything I had ever known. And just as I braced for oblivion, the shadow of my lurking self burst forth, and in a monstrous roar of life-sapping vitality, it bellowed, "You will never escape me." Everything shattered into darkness, and I was left dangling, trapped within an eternal moment, with only the whispers of the abyss to guide me into the depths of despair. The darkness twisted around me like a tightening noose, tugging at my very soul. Every breath I took felt heavy, laden with the weight of despair, the shadow still looming like a predatory beast eager to strike. It whispered promises of agony into the cracks of my mind, its breath hot against the hollow of my ear. You think the light can save you? You belong to me. In that fleeting moment, I felt an ignoble panic rise within me. I stumbled backward, crashing against the rough ground, the cold, unforgiving concrete merging with the encroaching darkness. It pressed in like a suffocating blanket, dulling my senses and warping my perception until I could no longer tell where my body ended and the shadows began. My fingertips scraped across the surface, seeking something, anything to hold on to as the weight of despair bore down. I could hear the whispers now, more distinct and anguished, dipping and soaring through a cacophony of tortured souls. "Help us," they begged, "free us." Their cries twisted around me, fusing moments of clarity with visceral dread. But in that bleakness, I could feel my heart thundering, matching the churning chaos around me, as if it alone dared to resist the tide of encroaching despair. I fought against the sensation of being consumed, pressing my palms against the ground, searching for a remnant of the vibrant world I had once known, that beautiful realm I could scarcely remember. Then, as if by fate's cruel design, a shriek pierced through the Dina voice far more potent than the others. "You must choose." It raged, sharp enough to cut through the veil of anguish. It echoed from beneath the shadows, drawing my eyes to a pulsating ring of light emerging where the darkness waned. The gateway flickered tantalizingly, an ephemeral pulse thrumming with an energy I craved, every fiber of my being yearning toward it. "Don't listen." The beast hissed, clawing at my mind, evidence of its primal fear layering over my thoughts like a shroud. "You're nothing without the darkness." My mind reeled as the faces of the damned danced mockingly at the fringes of my vision. David, Sarah, Lily, they broke through the walls of despair like apparitions grasping for the last breath of hope. "You can't let it win. Trust the light," they urged, their voices resonating like the tolling of desperate bells. I could feel my resolve building, surging within me as a secret flickered to life, the joy of love, friendship, those shining moments that cut through the never-ending night. My heart raced. Perhaps I could change the dynamic, perhaps I could reclaim my existence from this all-consuming void. Taking a breath that felt like a last chance, I focused on the ring of light, its warmth enveloping me. With trembling resolve, I surged forward, a primal scream escaping my lips. "I choose to defy." The shadows recoiled as I stumbled forthright, overcoming the suffocating dread that sought to ensnare me, but in my desperate lunge, the ground quaked violently, an unholy roar erupted, engulfing me in a chilling missive of agony. The shadowy beast writhed, morphing into hideous forms of my own creation, every long-buried guilt personified, every moment where I had faltered and failed. They danced around me, a mockery of my spirit, forcing me to confront my darkest truths. Do you truly believe you can escape? The multitude screamed and howled in unison, a symphony of my failures drowning out reason. You will submit to us, or you will perish in the light. In that moment, I hesitated. My resolve flickered against a sea of despair as I felt the political grip of the shadows tightening around my throat like a steel band. The nightmarish visage leered at me, distorting into grotesque snapshots of my life, memories torn from their roots. I froze, engulfed in the suffocating fog of my past. Come back, come back. It sounded so sweet now, the deceitful warble of the shadows. You need us. You belong here, N.O. I screamed, rage bubbling from within me. I will not go back. I will not return to you. But disaster struck when a sudden whim of darkness clutched my ankle, its fingers icy and unyielding. I was yanked back to the edge just as I reached for the light with trembling fingers. The glowing ring pulsed, fading and flickering, a celestial echo of my last chance. Join us, embrace the terror or lose the shimmering hope. The shadows rasped, their frenzy building, their multitude a ravenous mob shifting restlessly. I teetered on the precipice, every inch of my spirit fighting to stand strong against the waves of despair. Just then, the darkness surged, bearing down on me with agonizing force, and I felt myself slipping, edging toward oblivion. As despair clawed at my heart, I glimpsed the fragment of luminous hope I had nearly grasped, yearning for me to step into its beckoning embrace, and then it happened. A force unseen erupted from the depths of despair, surging upward with explosive power. The shadows parted only to reveal a silhouette cloaked in a tranquil haze, gliding seamlessly into the fray. Stop, or it will consume you. It echoed throughout the darkness, the voice resonating as if it were woven from strands of my past. Eyes wide, I was jolted by a sudden realization. It was her, Sarah. No longer just a memory, but a specter of the one woman who had dared to love me even in my deepest failures. You don't belong here, she implored, reaching out, but her face melded with agony, contorted by sorrow that I clenched my eyes shut against the throbbing dread that surrounded me, torn between my desire to accept the light's promise and the grim reality of my shunned past. And in that fragile instant, I heard the whispers of the void crescendo into a maddening shriek, the darkness swallowing me whole. The shimmering light faltered, and I felt the strands of my very being unraveling into nothingness. That terrifying heartbeat, the sensation of falling, spiraling into oblivion. My last conscious thought burned bright. Would I answer Sarah's call, or would I surrender to the shadow's terrible embrace? As the darkness engulfed me, a haunting question hung thick in the air. Would I be lost forever, or could I find the courage to confront my deepest fears? The world spun on its axis as I cascaded through emptiness, the distant cries of the shadows weaving a tapestry of horror that ensnared my every thought. Each breath I breathed strummed a dissonant chord in the fabric of darkness, and I felt time stretch, slow, then shatter like glass around me. In the fleeting moments of that descent, splinters of light pierced through the velvet void, revealing glimpses of fractured memories that taunted my fleeting sanity. A cacophony rose in my head, the voices blended with laughter and sobs, twisting and turning in a maddening dance. They shimmered just out of reach, each receding heartbeat leaving me colder, more adrift. How far from the light I had fallen. And just as despair clawed at the edges of my reality, I landed with a bone-jarring thud on the gritty surface of despair. Moments of shocked stillness passed before a creaking sound echoed through the void, stinging my senses and drawing my gaze upward. I sensed a looming presence, a gelid whisper that beckoned from above, reverberating like a tolling bell. You're still here, aren't you? It taunted, the familiarity of the voice pounding with an impatient hunger. I forced my eyes open, horrified to find myself surrounded by swirling shadows that loomed closer, engulfing me in their cold embrace. They undulated like living smoke, writhing and reaching towards my quaking form. All at once, I was aware of their eyes. Countless pairs peered out from the void, their visages blurring together into a grotesque orchestra of malice feeding on my fear. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, assembling into figures I could almost recognize, visages once familiar, now distorted by anger and sorrow, fragments of my past that I had buried deep beneath the facade of normalcy. They surrounded me, whispering secrets laced with venom. You left us behind. We were counting on you, yet you vanished into the light. Stop it. I screamed, desperately clawing at the tightly wound darkness as their sorrowful gazes consumed me. Faint memories flared like dying embers, voices, tears, and precious moments doused in regret. Each one struck with the sharpness of betrayal, bringing my heart to its knees. From the center of this chaos stepped a figure draped in shadows, the embodiment of failure, my very self manifesting in grim precision. It loomed taller, its features shifting through pain and torment. This is who you really are, it hissed, its form unraveling to reveal the consequences of every choice I had made, the darkness licking at the edges of my heart. No. I cried, stumbling backward, only to crash against a wall of luminescent mist, a veil shimmering with an ethereal glow I had nearly grasped. The spectral figure grinned, the bitter curl of its lips a knife across my psyche, and recognition dawned on me. His was not merely a reflection, but the essence of everything I had tried to escape. You think the light will save you? It sneered, each word a decree of despair. You will not escape what you fear. You will join us. With a primal roar, I lunged toward the light, intent to grasp its simmering essence, but just as my fingertips grazed its surface, it flickered violently. The brightness increased, casting shadows in stark contrast, igniting every fear that had kept me from freeing myself. You think you can outrun this darkness? It echoed, cutting like a blade through my soul. Suddenly, the light transformed, and I fell through failing beams to land amidst broken mirrors. Each surface glinted back my own horrified visage, contorted with an abject terror. The shadows, now sentient, surged forth, their whispers rising into a deafening chant. Embrace your truth, human. What you've forsaken will be your downfall. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing, eluding the surrounding darkness with panicked breaths. The shards around me flickered with remnants of lost memories, revealing faces of people I had harmed, those who had cried in agony as I fled from my failures. My legs trembled. I had never truly faced the consequences of my choices. Then, from the fray of shifting shadows, a familiar silhouette emerged. It was Sarah, her presence both serene and haunting. The edges of her form flickered with an otherworldly glow, merging the conflicting terrors of my past into a whirlwind of emotions. You must remember. She cried, her voice rich with longing echoing against the shadows. You can't escape, you must confront what you fear most. My pulse quickened as I met her pleading gaze, torn between the solace of the light and an abyss swarming with every wrong I had ever committed. In that moment, I understood, the shadows weren't just the essence of the unknown, but the direct manifestation of my guilt roiling within. I was the architect of my own entrapment, woven deep into a fabric that both cradled and suffocated me. But then, through the miasma of despair, a new horror emerged. Outside the shimmering veil, a more sinister being lurked, grotesque and unfathomable. It loomed larger than anything I had faced before, its eyes blazing like dying stars, each blink a promise of annihilation. You chose the darkness, it rumbled, a voice that resonated through thick fogs of sound. Now you will never see the light again. As panic washed over me like a frigid wave, I realized I now stood on the threshold of an ancient conflict, not only between light and dark but between the lives I had touched and the monster I had turned into. The very act of choosing had become my ultimate horror, and the ringing laughter of the shadows morphed into a chilling echo that threatened to drown my final glimmers of hope. In the clutches of despair and surrounded by shadows, with Sarah's echoes of affected love cutting through flames of agony, I felt the grip of fate tighten around my throat, squeezing the breath from my lungs. The abysmal presence surged forward, and it only took a heartbeat for everything me past, my failures, my hopito teeter on the brink of annihilation. Just as I was about to plunge completely into despair, body and mind tearing apart at their seams, a deafening howl emerged from the forest of shadows, reverberating through to my very core. It's not over. It screamed, an eruption of sound, drowning out the silence and confusion. But there, eye to eye with the monstrous entity I had conjured from my greatest fears, uncertainty clawed harder than ever, and I was left asking, conflicting emotions swirling, would I conquer this darkness, or would I finally become the lost soul I was fated to be? The instant the howl ripped through the space, a fragmented pocket of clarity surged within the storm of shadows. Startled, I turned to see if anyone else had heard it, but I remained utterly alone. The void of familiarity consumed me, the shadows clinging tighter, wrapping around my limbs like serpents eager to suffocate. The creature that loomed beyond the veil drew closer, its features merging with the chaotic mass of despair surrounding me. Its face, if that's what it could be called, shifted with grotesque fluidity, the skin shimmering in the darkness, revealing a mosaic of every anguished expression I could remember. It was as if the shadows and my guilt had woven together to create this abomination, a physical manifestation of what I feared most, the collective weight of my failures, resurrected to claim retribution. No more running. The being boomed, distorting the air with its thunderous voice. You will not hide behind facades any longer. I am here to strip you bare. I staggered backward, my heart hammering against my ribs, each beat echoing louder in this haunted abyss. The weight of Sarah's gaze lingered, a specter of love intertwined with relentless pain. She hovered, urging me forward, but her essence felt heavy, tethered to the memories I wished to forget, confront it. She pleaded, her voice wavering like a candle flickering in a tempest. You need to face what you have forsaken. Only then can you rise from this darkness. But could I truly confront such terror? Each step toward the creature seemed to tether me further into my own dread. I remembered her laughter in the warmth of summer, her hand tucking a wayward hair behind her ear, but those memories twisted into a haunting reminder of the life I had abandoned. The entity drew closer still, its eyes burning like black holes, consuming everything in their gaze. With every ounce of my being, I turned to face the fragments of my past weaving through the shadows, desperate for a glimmer of courage. Why, Sarah? My voice trembled, crackling under the weight of despair. Why must I relive this? In answer, the shadows around me congealed, forming a labyrinth of torment, a winding path marked with images of my failures. With mind-numbing weakness, clarity pierced through the fog, each face a reminder of my betrayal. Friends I had abandoned, laughter turned to tears, love turned to rage, all manifesting like a grim operatic chorus echoing around me. The creature growled in anticipation, urging me down this path of penance and pain. You never wanted to see, did you? You ran, letting the darkness claim what could have been yours. Now, I will show you. The walls of shadows twisted, revealing a doorway splattered with dread. It pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing me closer, compelling me to step through. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something deeper urged me on. With every breath, I felt the shadows tightening, threatening to consume me whole. Embrace your past, become one with it. The creature cackled, and before I could blink, I was thrust into the corridor of darkness, yanked into a deep, unending void. Faces swirled, their anguish leaching into my soul. The echoes of long-lost conversations weaved through the air, voices pleading for redemption, for forgiveness. Yet another face materialized, more vivid than the rest, flashing through the torment, my brother, his eyes lifeless and hollow, a stark warning against the path I had taken. Why did you abandon me? He uttered, the whisper gripping my heart with icy talons. You left me here alone. In an instant, the shadows coalesced into a cyclone of agony, ripping through my reality with relentless fury, and the images became unmoored, shifting like sand carried in a gale. Undulating waves of despair and guilt crashed over me, merging the past with the present, blurring every line I had tried to draw in my life. No more. I cried out, the weight of truth crashing over me. But there was no sanctuary, only the unrelenting grip of repercussions urging me to confront what laid heavy on my heart. Face it. Sarah's ethereal voice rang anew, a beacon. Amidst the chaos. You can't escape it any longer. The answer lies within. The creature closed in, every heartbeat resonating with the unholy dread coursing through the air. You belong to me. It roared, a blinding flash erupting from its eyes, sending shockwaves through me, and as panic consumed the last shimmers of hope, the swirling darkness coiled its way around my heart, tightening its grip like a vice until reality faded into a singular moment, one in which my breath caught, and the anguish within me reached a pinnacle. With one final scream, I was swept into the abyss, the shadows swallowing me whole as a raucous laughter echoed against the walls of my shattered mind. But just as I was about to succumb to the darkness, a new presence emerged from the deep. A chilling whisper seeped through the cracks of despair, reverberating in my soul. The truth lurks just beyond the light, it taunted, a grating sound promising horrible revelations, and in that very moment, the ground beneath me trembled, and I felt the horizon shift, uncoiling into an unfathomable terror. The entity's grip tightened as a wave of shadows surged forward, ready to drown me in a newfound horror. What truth awaited me within the abyss? Would I be brave enough to uncover the darkness swirling in my heart, or would I become yet another lost soul consumed by its insatiable hunger? The darkness enveloped me, pulling me deeper into its suffocating grasp, blurring my thoughts as memories flitted by like shadows quicksand, pulling me under. I felt the weight of despair compressing my chest, the stifling presence of every wrong I had ever inflicted pressing in on every side. Every regret, every face I had betrayed, came rushing forward, demanding recognition. It was as if I stood at the edge of an abyss, teetering precariously over a void filled with gnashing teeth and spectral wails. The creature loomed behind me, a grotesque amalgamation of every fear I had ever harbored, its cold, slithering voice scraping against my mind like nails on a chalkboard. You cannot escape who you are. You abandoned them. You let them down. They were counting on you. Fighting back tears, I wrestled with the urge to flee, terror clenching my limbs as the horrific manifestations of my failures surged around me, pulling me deeper into this waking nightmare. Their voices melded together into a chorus of despair, "Help us, free us," ringing in my ears, echoing within the hollow walls of guilt that encased my heart. "Please stop." I screamed, but the shadows only thickened, drowning me in their grief. Then, through the tumult, I saw Sarah's face flash, her expression twisted in anguish, eyes pleading, yet bursting with an otherworldly strength. "You have to choose," she urged, her voice slicing through the chaos like a knife. "Choose?" I echoed, terror warming into despair. "Choose what?" "They won't let me go." The creature coiled tighter around me, drawing nearer. "They won't let you go because they are a part of you," it hissed, its voice echoing like a wounded beast echoing in a cavern. "And you cannot escape yourself." That I in that moment, a flicker of understanding ignited within me. This darkness, this creature, was a manifestation of my own guilt and cowardice. It wasn't merely the specters of my past seeking vengeance, it was my own soul, fractured and twisted, begging for confrontation and redemption. I had trapped myself in this web of sorrow and regret, and the longer I fought against it, the tighter the noose became. Suddenly, I felt a surge of clarity. I would not let it win. I reversed my stance against the oncoming tide, gripping the cold, dark air as if it could anchor me. "I will face my past," I declared, my voice rising above the cacophony. "I will not let this darkness consume me." The shadows recoiled, their whispers turning to screams as they retreated ever so slightly. "You can't. You don't understand," they wailed, but I stepped forward, pushing against the oppressive weight of despair, reaching for the memories I had so desperately wanted to forget. "I will remember," I cried, grasping the flickers of every lost face, Sarah's warmth, David's lost camaraderie, Lily's innocent laughter, pulling them close, allowing their pain to twist with my own until I could see them fully, intermingled in a grotesque tapestry. In that instant, the darkness erupted in fury, the creature lunging forward to claw me apart. "Fool!" it shrieked. "You will be lost. You cannot reclaim what you have forsaken." But I pressed on, allowing their anguish to flood over me, sinking into the guilt that surged within. I closed my eyes, inviting each memory like a wound long hidden, feeling the pain burn, every lost opportunity, every moment I had forsaken those who cared for me, pushing against the tides of shadow. With each memory, more light flowed through me, illuminating the shadows gathering at my feet, sending them skittering back in horror. When I opened my eyes again, I stood before the creature, the hollow gleam of its eyes burning into my soul. "I will not be afraid anymore," I said, my heart racing, each pulse a drum of defiance against the oppressive grasp of the shadows. "You don't define me." With one final roar of anguish, the creature recoiled, its form shifting, darkening into a storm of swirling chaos, as if the void itself had opened beneath me. In a flash, I saw the final images coalesce, familiar, painful visages from my past blurring together in an unforgettable tableau. Their hands reached for me, not in anger but with need, with hope, urging me to recall our shared warmth, the laughter and memories woven in the fabric of life. But just as I stepped into their arms, a terrifying realization surged through me. Something remained behind, buried within those shadows, a lingering dread that had never truly faded. Even if I faced and embraced my guilt, there was an unseen truth waiting to unleash itself, a final twist to my redemption story. Do you really think this ends here? The creature hissed in a voice that quivered through the air, rising above the chorus of memories. You may have faced your demons, but what if the darkest part of your past was only a harbinger of what's to come? Before I could react, the shadows burrowed back with relentless strength, erupting into torrents, swirling around me in a whirlwind. I could feel the darkness clawing deeper into my very essence, stripping away the hope I had just grasped. The shadows thickened like an inky fog, curling around my ankles as they surged forth, spiraling up my legs, seeking something terrified within me, a darker secret I had buried even deeper. Your pain will feed the darkness, the voice echoed, clawing at my mind. You may have lifted the veil, but the horror remains raw, unrepentant and ready to claim you. As the choking tendrils of shadow threatened to draw me back into the void, the echoes of every lost soul converged, shrouding me in a cacophony of wretched screams. The creature, its form more massive than ever, bound my heart with fear, a final warning wrapping around my throat like cold steel. Your past is only the beginning. Are you prepared to confront what lies in your soul? The darkness will never truly fade. In that moment, clarity struck me like lightning. I did not have the capacity to eradicate it, nor could I escape it forever. The real horror was not the memories I had wrestled with tonight, it was what they would mean for tomorrow, and as the shadows surged forward with all their malice, I finally understood the true horror was not just what lingered in the depths of the night, but who I would become when morning broke. And with that chilling realization echoing in my mind, I knew the darkness would always be waiting right outside my door.